Afternoon, everyone. It is a Chamber of Commerce Day. My name is Brad Klopfenstein. I am president of the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce, and you are watching Chamber Chat, presented by Bose, McKinney, and Evans. Here to introduce our guests today from Bose, McKinney, and Evans, we have Alan Becker. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Brad. I thought that before we get started, I would take just a moment to mention our affiliate, which some people don't know entirely about, which is Bose Public Affairs Group. That is a group of professionals that gets involved in public and governmental affairs work, lobbying, consulting regarding legislative and executive branch matters, government procurement, public relations, and crisis communications. So they deal with when things go really badly for you. I've got my people that I always call to try to help us deal with the press and figure out how to present our best face to the public. Today we're joined by two of our state senators. The first is Kyle Walker, who is a Lawrence resident and a Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce member. He's serving his first session as a state senator, filling out the term of the vacated District 31 seat. Kyle's district includes the northern half of Lawrence Township and the southern half of Fall Creek Township in Fishers. Kyle was previously a panelist on the TV show Indiana Issues alongside our genial host, Brad Klopfenstein. Andy Zay was born and raised in Huntington, Indiana, which I'm very familiar with since that's where my father grew up. And he serves Huntington, Grant, Wabash, and Whitley counties. He's been in the Indiana Senate since 2016 and is one of the 4 members of the championship golf team of Fries, Smythe, Klopfenstein, and Zay. So I will, we welcome both of them, and I will say, take it away, Brad.
All right, Alan, thank you. So Bose Public Affairs Group, is that just a little upstart?
No, that's been around for many, many years, and it's grown to a huge size. As far as I'm concerned, they take up an entire floor of our building. So they've got a lot of people there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Alan. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your support of the Lawrence Chamber.
You're quite welcome.
So, gentlemen, welcome to Chamber Chat here in Lawrence. Kyle, you are a Lawrence resident. Andy, you might as well be a Lawrence resident. So we'll start. Kyle, let me ask you, how is it you're now 2 months into this new gig? What's your impressions? And I will say, I teased you right before this. I was looking at some of your authored bills, and according to the Senate webpage, you are a perfect 4 for 4 on authored bills making it out of the Senate. So take it away, Rookie.
Yeah. No, I can't really take a whole lot of credit for that. So I'm an author, but I wasn't the lead author on those. But I got in this pretty late in the game as it relates to writing and drafting legislation. So I sort of took the approach of looking for things that I wanted to support and try to be helpful on. And so those 4 bills are all important in their own way and sort of dramatically different topics too. But so far so good. This is it's a fun place to serve. There's a lot going on. We obviously have there's just hundreds and hundreds of bills, and the process is sometimes long and sometimes can seem a little messy, but it is a good one. And fortunate enough to serve on insurance and financial institutions with Chairman Zay. And so my overall impression has been, it's been a great experience so far, and I'm looking forward to this second half.
So any surprises so far? And I see over your shoulder, you've got the list of all the elected officials. You had to refer to that just to see, everybody you're talking to?
Yeah, well, on the Senate side, there's only 50 of us, and it's been fairly quick to learn names and faces, although masks make that tougher. But with the House, they actually do their session over in the government center, and so we rarely see House members just kind of milling around. You might see 1 or 2 folks, going to the car at the end of the day. But so that's been a challenge. And, and obviously there's very limited number of events where we can interact. And so, yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge for me is some of the folks that I don't know on the House side. I just don't have much of an opportunity to run into them.
Okay. Senator Zay, so you're the wily veteran here. What's your impression of how things are going so far? How are you dealing with the new protocols, and what are the big issues that you see that are facing Indiana?
Well, it has been a different session. There's no denying that. But in spite of that, I've been real proud of how the Senate's conducted business. We have remained all in the chamber. Half of us, or a little less than half of us, are upstairs in the gallery, which is not very comfortable, but we're making do. But we've done our job. The committees have done their work and vetted a lot of legislation that's moved its way over to the House, and now we're looking for the House bills to get assigned to committees and begin the second half. So in spite of the disruption, the masks, the social distancing, and some of the scheduling and that being a tad different, it is feeling a little normal insofar as getting the state's business done. It's time for us in the Senate side to kind of readjust our sights and focus now on the budget and some of the financial pieces of what's going to happen here in the state of Indiana. So that will be, or is, over in our body now. So within some of the committees and certainly with appropriations, that'll be a lot of our topical conversations. So we've already had some work on that, but it'll be a lot more in earnest as we move ahead here.
So have you gotten any guidance yet on what the state budget's going to look like, what the revenue forecasts are? Have we held up well?
Well, the revenue forecasts aren't real clear yet. I think we're waiting on the, they're good in what we have so far, but the budget's always kind of finalized in the last few weeks off of estimates, and we wait on an estimate that comes out early in April. And that is what the final numbers of the budget are estimated on. But based on what the House has put in, what the governor has proposed for some of the asks, it feels pretty good. It feels like we're pretty strong, and they're even building the reserves back up and back in. And I think it's a real testament to how we finance state government here in the state of Indiana. We have the reserves for when we need them. We used them in the last year. It rained, if you will, rainy day fund, and I think we're looking to get back into that position where we have those reserves nested away for future needs. But yeah, I think all in all, we're looking good, and the unemployment rates back at a reasonable level, and we can hopefully continue to drive that south.
So I'll just kind of throw this out to both of you. I was looking through some of your constituent survey results. These here are Kyle's. It was interesting to see that, like, on some of the budget priorities, that the two biggest things that were out there were an increase in minimum wage, but also cutting taxes. As legislators, how do you weigh those two? Because those two things are not generally together.
Well, and for my part, in terms of what my constituents responded on those surveys, yeah, cutting taxes is really high, and the highest one was relief for Hoosiers adversely affected by COVID-19, which again the two are sometimes difficult to reconcile, right? If you need to provide more funding and also try to cut taxes, right? But I think the approach that the House has taken and the particularly the budget leaders in the Senate have taken has been a wise one in terms of providing additional funding for COVID relief through House Bill 1004 is coming over, and it has, I think, an additional $30 million for businesses that had a dramatic effect, particularly the hospitality industry. And so that's important, but it's also again, in terms of cutting taxes, it's going to be, I think, a tall order to actually cut, but I think we can provide a very strong balanced budget that doesn't provide for tax increases either. And so it's all a balance, and the folks that have been here for a long time that lead our sort of, again, fiscal side of things are pretty adept at doing that. And as Andy said, the results have been great over the last decades at this point. We've had the opportunity to have reserves that we've been able to rely on. And I mean, we're the envy of just about every other state, particularly in the Midwest, but really in the country.
Well, and I agree, and so much as it feels like those two comments are in conflict, I feel they're actually kind of in unison from the vantage point that an emphasis of ours in the state of Indiana, particularly with our current governor, is to continue to enhance workforce development, and that naturally will drive up some of the wages. And I think we saw a great trend with that before the COVID shutdown, and I think we still have a high demand for high demand jobs. And our focus and the governor's focus has been in training for that workforce development for the high demand jobs and the high paying jobs. And I think that's the focus in all corners of the state, honestly. And with that, hopefully it will drive the revenue streams to allow us to look at things more critically and hopefully bring savings back to Hoosiers. Is there anything on the press up right now of a true tax cut? Probably not at this time. But, as things stabilize, as we move out of this and get that workforce jacked back up and, get the wage increases hopefully coming up with it, there may be an opportunity to look at very things like that.
So now, Senator Zay, let me shift gears a little bit. I know that you had a big initiative to bring $150 million towards broadband in rural Indiana. What is the status of that bill?
Well, as is very evident as we sit here on Zoom right now, I mean, the winds of connectivity, the winds of connection are at our back this year. We, threw all our students home last March, and there's been a lot of e-learning and virtual learning going on. It's still continuing a lot in higher ed. And we've seen our telehealth absolutely explode. A health system up here in Northeast Indiana, their telehealth went up 10,500%. Huge jump. And of course, we know that a lot of the business folks are working remotely now. So there's a huge increase in that. And to the credit of our ag community, they've really been screaming for this connectivity for years. And they've been beating this drum consistently because of the high-tech equipment that they're using in the fields. So it's time, in my opinion, to get beyond the study of 2014, because we're really having some of those same conversations, and be very intentional about investing in the last mile of broadband. The key is to not put investment and reinvestment over itself, because putting out broadband infrastructure is very expensive. And so I kind of took a creative approach to that, where we keep the next level broadband grant in place, but we also have a demand element in the middle where we build off of existing infrastructure, and it kind of comes from the consumer, from the individual Hoosier back to the broadband, and it's kind of a reverse auction. So if there's infrastructure close, we will work to subsidize it to get out to those folks, either business or individuals that are requesting that. And my hope with that is that it's something where we can move the ball forward a little more quickly, because developing those networks like some of the rural REMCs and other providers are doing, I mean, that takes a lot of engineering, and you're building out and you don't know exactly what the demand is. So after you build out, then you're trying to get people to sign up for the service. And then the third thing that I think is critically important, as you look at telehealth with some of our elderly folks, and we look at education with our 600,000 Hoosier students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch, is the adoption piece. And that's where we have I set some funds aside from our request to allow those folks to connect and possibly even get into devices or whatever. So our elderly can access telehealth, and so our students can continue to have the virtual and e-learning services that they need. So I put a line item in there of $100 million, which was basically continuing it forward from the last budget cycle. And much to my surprise and excitement, honestly, the governor committed $250 million to that. So that's what's presently in the budget right now. And we'll see how much of that we can keep in there, whether we working with our team of fiscal leaders, if we have to trim that down, or if we'll be able to sustain that. Because it's a multi-billion-dollar problem throughout the state. But I firmly believe that the state that really gets this figured out is going to have a distinct economic development advantage moving forward. Our friends in New York and California, our family members that have moved out there, even Chicago, and we've talked about Illinois for a long time here in Indiana. they're looking to move. They're looking to get out of some of those places. And if they can come to our small communities, even our suburban and rural communities, and have great connection and great opportunities to be a part of the World Wide Web, I mean, where you live is not quite as important. But I think Indiana is well positioned with our quality of life and our economics to be a home to lots of those folks. We've got to make sure we have this in a great place so they can come be Hoosiers.
Nice. Now, Senator Walker, you're kind of new to this game, but I think you're in a fairly unique position. You're a Lawrence resident. You live in Marion County. There's a lot of bills that are either Marion County specific this year, or I'm not going to say punitive to Marion County. However, there seems to be somewhat of a debate between local control versus state continuity. Just given where you live, do you find yourself getting caught in the middle of some of these bills and initiatives that are out there, or what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, a little bit. You know, I mean, I'm a strong advocate of local control, and really always have been. You know, I was a Lawrence City Councilor. I worked for the city of Indianapolis, and so, you know, I have experienced that firsthand, and my votes this year have been consistent with that. And you know, the only sort of Marion County specific bill, well, not the only, I shouldn't say that, but the one that I actually am an author on is changes the way zoning would work for excluded cities in Marion County. And it's not trying to unravel Unigov, and it's not trying to, it's not trying to create an additional layer of government. In fact, it's trying to eliminate a layer of government, because currently, for instance, in the city of Lawrence, we have a Board of Zoning Appeals, and if you're a developer that wants to do a variance or rezone, you go through that board first, and then it goes to an additional layer that no other city in the state has, which is the City County Council's Board of Zoning Appeals, or Indianapolis's. So it would take that layer out. The city of Indianapolis is actually supportive of that. And there was some original language in it that talked about townships, which I think was inconsistent with sort of that concept of eliminating a layer. But it appears to be satisfied by providing a requirement for additional township participation. So I'm excited about that. I think that'll be good for our excluded cities, particularly the city of Lawrence. And some of the other bills, you know, there was a bill affecting Indigo that I was not supportive of, but you know, I understand some of the concerns that folks have with that and other of these Marion County specific bills. But you know, for Lawrence, and you know, I think most of the chamber members know, the purple line is planned to go right to the heart of Lawrence, which is Fort Bend. There's been a lot of infrastructure already, and a lot of investment already made based on that, including a brand new police station, and then all of the work that's being done on Fort Bend. And so I just simply didn't want to jeopardize, it's $77.5 million of federal grant money that will go to the Purple Line alone. So it's a significant infrastructure investment. It's not just about transit. There's an infrastructure component that's really important. So generally speaking, yeah, some of these I've not been completely aligned with all of my colleagues, but I try to look for what's best for Lawrence and Fishers and in my portion of Indianapolis, and try to use that as my guidepost.
Well, we appreciate it. We actually had a meeting as a chamber here last week talking about that issue with the zoning. So we appreciate your efforts in trying to reduce that dual layer, because I know Jeff Taylor was on here and Ross Snyder were part of that conversation. So we've reached the part in the show where I promised that we would open it up to questions. So if you have a question for our guests, just raise your hand and I will call on you. Got to be a question out there from somebody. Bill Smythe has a question. You need to unmute yourself, but go right ahead, Bill.
I'm going to start with my favorite senator. How you doing, Kyle? Andy?
There was the dramatic pause.
Well, it's always me. Andy, we chatted briefly. Just give me the short tour of SB 288 and why you guys are trying to ban books in schools. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, that's certainly not the intent, but it's tough. There is some bad stuff out there that is being pushed down to the elementary level. And library boards, some school libraries are not catching this material. And to share with you some of the stuff that was presented in committee was horrendous. And so the intent was, right. The process is difficult because it becomes a matter of legislating morality, which is always difficult. And it's pretty easy to define a few of the examples that were given, and insofar as that stuff needs to go. But once you start down that path, where do you stop? And I think that's why it didn't advance. But I'm not going to elaborate, but I assure you it was terrible. It was
Well,
stuff that could not be presented on TV or anywhere else, and not even it would be censored off our social media sites, honestly.
I have the greatest
And,
confidence that you will go ahead and manage that. And in the future, you want to send some of that to my email so we can discuss it more elaborately. I will. Not to cut you off, but let's go to Kyle, give him a chance. Hey, our speaker and Representative Jeter both supported HB 1381. Give you a quick synopsis. It's basically the continuation of the Senate's effort to usurp local control, this time in Hamilton County and or other counties. I assume Andy's opposed to it. What are your thoughts on that?
Is this the siting bill?
This is the solar energy,
Yeah.
whatever. They want to remove the planning or zoning from the county commissioners, which ironically, my opponent, came and spoke in favor of it, and still the speaker voted against it. Him, Goodrich, and Jeter all voted against it in Hamilton County, which is shameful when you got Tor, Shively, and Cook on one side. So I wish your thoughts. It's going to come up to you.
Well, oh, you bet. And I've heard a lot about it, particularly from my Hamilton County commissioners. And again, consistent with local control, I think that I would like to see that change here in the Senate to allow for local control, because the bill itself has other components to it, all of which is not bad. But that part, is not something that I think I can be supportive of, because it's kind of a one-size-fits-all approach, and I understand the rationale behind it, which is to try to provide some consistency for these companies coming in and wanting to make these major investments. But at the end of the day, it's a massive shift from the control issue than what we have today. And I think, again, I'm hopeful that there'll be some adjustment to the language.
Well, I mean, I live adjacent to a cemetery in an unincorporated Fall Creek.
Yeah.
In my theory, you guys could be putting wind turbines next door to me. Now, I'm assuming the dead would object if I don't, but I mean, that's the kind of the problem. If I can't unvote the state, I can unvote my commissioners, is where I stand on that. Okay?
Yeah, you bet. And it's happened in several counties across the state where they've felt the wrath of making the wrong decisions. But I think, that's part of the process, right? And that's the value of keeping it on the county level.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank our sponsor, Bose, McKinney and Evans, LLP, and their small little fledgling group, Bose Public Affairs. I say fledgling group with tongue firmly planted in cheek, since they're a Goliath down at the Statehouse. But thank you, Alan and Bose, McKinney and Evans, for sponsoring the Greater Lawrence Chamber Chat. Do we have other questions for our guests while we're here? Jeff, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I guess it's for both you senators. Thanks for the time today. I just, it's interesting when you get to author your own bills, but now you got to see what comes at you from the other side. What are you most excited about that's coming over from the House?
Andy, you want to take that first?
Excitement. It's an interesting word in the legislature. There's a lot of excitement, but the budget there's just so much in that, and every component of the budget. There's certainly a lot of dynamics surrounding the education world this year, as there is every 2 years, as that encompasses over 50% of our budget in the K through 12 space. There's a lot of consternation about higher ed. The fact that they've been remote this year. And, be interesting, though they've been remote, they're going to come back and ask for significant funds. We've heard a lot of feedback I have from Hoosiers and folks that from out of state that are attending our in-state colleges about the value there and what the atmosphere on our campuses of higher ed. And then, the priorities, as we spoke about earlier with broadband, are we going to be able to keep the 250 million alive? If not, what level are we going to be able to manage broadband at? So I think those are some of the priorities, which, I'm not directly dealing with. I think Bill's comment on the 1381 will be, there's a lot more behind that because the state of Indiana has to up its game, kind of whether we like it or not, and renewable energy. So we're going to have to look at that a little more creatively, without taking away that local authority, because that's become a big utility question. The utility prices have gone up over the last few years from where we were, but we've also have a lot of industry and a lot of folks that are demanding a certain amount of renewable and green energy supplies. So how are we going to do that moving forward? And how do we balance that as kind of a interstate utility regulation or opportunity? Excitement's a tough word, Jeff. I appreciate the question, but there certainly will be plenty to do. I've been engaged in a pharmacy benefit manager regulation. We'll have some of that coming back from the House. And, the design in that is hopefully to regulate that world to allow us. I don't think what we're working on right now will be direct savings, but it'll be a step in the right direction in transparency, where hopefully the market can engage and drive some of that pricing down. And if not, we'll have a better sense of what our next step will be as a legislature to, drive those drug cost savings down to Main Street.
Yeah, I would say, the work that Senator Zay and others like Senator Bohatchik, and other folks that are on the committee is really important, right? I mean, it's largely based on transparency, and I make the analogy that drug prices are like, gas prices. They go up, they go down, and you ask somebody why, and everybody's like, I don't know, they just do. And so the work that he and others are doing, and I've been a part of some of them, but is I think really important to that transparency. And for me personally, what I'm excited about that's coming over is there's a House Bill 1558, which is the Indiana Crime Guns Task Force bill. And the kind of Cliff's Notes version on that is that it's actually in place now, this system. It's a joint task force between the ATF, IMPD, and Fisher's Police Department. And it really just brings things into the modern age that I thought were already being done. So if there's a gun crime that happens in Marion County, but maybe they have the casings, but they don't have maybe someone shot a stop sign or something, they would normally just sort of write a quick report and move on. Now, under this sort of task force, they would treat all those treat everything as forensic evidence and put it into a central database. Now, again, these are only guns used in the commission of a crime. And then if that same gun was used in the commission of a crime outside of that jurisdiction, then it could be, hit in that database, and any evidence they have in the first case can be matched up with the second. And so it's really a valuable tool. And we've Greg Sturwald carried this in the House, and Mayor Fadness is a big supporter, obviously. And they've talked to all of the jurisdictions, either county sheriffs or local police departments in the donut area around Marion County, and everyone is interested in participating. And I think it can be just with Fishers in Indianapolis, there's been over 150 cases that have been cleared because of this. So it tells you the scope or the impact that this can have. And I think it'll actually be a real difference maker in terms of stopping violent crime.
Thanks, Jeff. I saw Jeff Taylor put a comment in the chat box, and I know we've got a couple representatives from the Lawrence Township Schools here, so I wanted to address this a little bit. He was talking about K-12 public education, and I assume funding as it relates to workforce development. And is there anything that we can do to bolster the educational opportunities? And are there initiatives that would allow kids to go to private schools? Would that hurt the public schools?
How long do we have?
Your best 30-second response to that, Senator Zay.
There's been great initiatives, and one initiative that I've kind of made over the last few years, which there's some kind of cleanup legislation that Senator Rogers is doing on that right now. Some of my best professors when I was in college were what are called adjunct professors, and those were the folks that had the real world experience that came into the classroom and then taught the classroom material as well. And what I tried to do is bring that down to the high school level. When you're talking about trades and certifications, there are great scientists, there are great specialists out there around some of our communities, particularly up in the rural areas where I am, working in some of our industries that could come in and teach 1 or 2 courses. And so we've tried to make that teacher kind of certification, that teacher opportunity a lot more accessible and available. And I think that in and of itself is lending right to this workforce development and the CT credit that we're trying to, help our kids graduate with some sort of intentionality. I mean, a high school diploma isn't what a high school diploma was. And we want our kids to graduate with some sort of purpose and direction of where they're heading. And it's not necessarily higher ed in all cases. If it is, we can prepare them for that as well. But we also want to expose them to a lot of other opportunities and degrees, and just kind of find out the strengths and weaknesses of those kids and introduce them to new things. And I think there's a lot of different programs really with the career pathways that we're working on. That's introduced in the middle school level. It's enhanced by the freshman, sophomore level, where they're fully engaged by the time they're juniors and seniors. So we're in about the 3rd year of that implementation. So I think you're going to begin to see that. I mean, COVID obviously was a big disruptor to a lot of programs like that, but you're going to begin to see, I think, a lot of high school students that are graduating with a lot of certifications, ready to go in the workforce, ready to go to some additional training and again complement the workforce. You're going to see kids going to schools of higher ed as second semester freshmen or sophomores, where they're getting dual credits now in high school, and is also helping drive down the cost of secondary education. And I think we have a lot of things going on in all the right directions. And with education in general, and this is certainly the case, we need to be a little more patient and let some of these programs fulfill themselves. And I think we're in many cases, in all cases, we're heading the right direction. But we've got to let some of these things settle in.
Senator Walker, anything to add to that?
I think he really, hit it on the head there. I mean, we've got a lot of things there, great things going, and we need to, let those breathe a little bit. But I can tell you, being on the education committee, that every bill that comes to that committee, and really the caucus in general, there's a very holistic sort of thought process to it all. It's not we try to take great pains to make sure that we're looking at, what does this do for the students? What does this do for workforce? And how are we, from a policy side of things, providing opportunities to make sure that those needs are met.
And we have time for one last question from Ross Snyder. Ross, go right ahead.
Thanks, Brad. And thank you, Kyle and Andy. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us and appreciate your efforts in the Senate. Brad mentioned that our Greater Lawrence Chamber Government Affairs Committee met last week, and we talked about some of the bills that have already been talked about. But another one that we talked about involved work sharing, which at the title to me is kind of confusing. It's like unemployment benefits sharing, I think. But Kyle, I think you were an author or co-author on one of those bills. So I assume you're supportive of that initiative. So if you or Senator Zay would just like to briefly talk about that concept and what the outlook is for it in the future.
Yeah, happy to. You know, work sharing, it's sort of a new concept to me, but it's been around and it's in other states, obviously. That bill that I was a co-author on did not move through the Senate this year, but I think it did help open the conversation up. And for any of those folks that don't know exactly what it is, it's, as Ross said, it's essentially, it allows you to have a kind of step down or step up unemployment benefits. And so rather than just being completely unemployed or completely employed, there's this middle ground in times of stress for the business, or obviously in years like this, it would have had a huge impact, not just for the employers and the employees, but also our employment fund generally. And so the whole concept is keeping people at work for as much time as they can be at work, and with the hopes that after any kind of storms weather, then they would just go back to full employment.
The practical philosophy of work sharing is great, and that is to help build people from out of work to in work, and be able to have that unemployment benefit at a lesser level as they transition, kind of filling in the gray area, if you will. And I think conceptually that sounds very provocative. My concern really with it is the timing. We just killed our unemployment insurance trust fund last year. And we're in a position as a state where we've got to rebuild that up. We committed $400 million of our CARES Act funds to replenishing some of that. And even there's talk of 20 to 30% of those funds that went out of the unemployment trust fund having gone out fraudulently. And so when you look at the impact of having to go back and look at the fund and who got those funds, and look at how we can transition that to a partial, and being able to maintain control of that in what I would call a very down cycle in the unemployment trust fund right now, it just doesn't feel like the right time to me. And that's really what my reservation with the whole concept of the work sharing. I understand it's happening in other states, and some other states may have some tools and some better thoughts of how to manage that. But we talk about kind of building this bridge in a lot of different areas, and I think work sharing is another place to do that, where we're trying to work on taking people from unemployment to employment, where maybe we can offer partial benefits. We try and do that with some of our welfare programs, some of our student programs, because the problem is many times when you work on these formulas in government, you qualify or you don't. So you're either in or you're out. And so with the work sharing and some of these other programs we have, it kind of builds that bridge between, yeah, you're not quite in or you're not quite out yet, but helping do that. And I think that's what WorkShare tries to accomplish. I would just like to replenish the unemployment trust fund before we get too creative with that fund.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all. Again, you've all been watching Chamber Chat presented by Bose, McKinney, and Evans, LLP. Thank you all for being here. Senators, thank you very much for joining us. I know that we had more questions, but we have gone way over on time. So out of respect for your time and everyone else's, we'll wrap this up. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Keep in mind some of our bigger events coming up. April 22nd, we have our State of the Schools luncheon with Superintendent Dr. Smith, who joined us here today. He will be speaking. May 12th at the Garrison, we're going to be having State of the City with Mayor Collier. He'll be speaking at that one. We've got a couple more that we're working on that we'll be rolling out as far as chamber events coming up shortly. And one last little bit of housekeeping. Erica Alexander, who has been here for the last couple of years with the Lawrence Chamber, Friday is her last day. So drop her an email and thank her for her service. Or if you would like to thank her in person, we're going to be getting together at Murphy's Craft House on Friday, 3:45, 4 o'clock or so. So come out, have a pint, and wish Erica well. She's going to be staying in the community, so she's not going far. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Take care.
Thank you all for being on. Brad, thanks for continuing to host this.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Well, thank you.